This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome, everyone. We're just going to give a couple minutes here. I'm sorry we're starting late. I had technical issues with Zoom, as always. Thanks to everyone who's joining us. We're going to have an exciting discussion today, despite technical difficulties. Okay, so welcome to the second of our series of 3 winter webinars that the Kansas Disability Caucus is hosting. I'm Noelle Kurth. I am a board member of the Kansas Disability Caucus and kind of moderating things today. Our webinar series is sponsored by CareSource. We thank them for their sponsorship. Today's presentation is Gaming for All, Making Inclusion Fun, and my slide still has the title from last week. Sorry. Our presenters are Daniel Brunk. Oh God, Daniel Brunk. This slide is useless. I'm so sorry, everyone. Let's see.
Angie Brunk. Angie is the other.
Angie, yes, not Angie Brunk, Daniel Ireton. Okay, so just to remind everyone, I know we've all used Zoom a lot, but we have live captioning by Jane Piles. You can turn that on and off with the CC button on your Zoom toolbar. And if you need to change your subtitles, there are subtitle settings so that you can adjust and make things bigger or smaller. And we have sign language interpreters on the webinar today. We thank Jolene and Trina who will be doing that. The presenter said you can ask questions throughout as things come up, and I will voice those as they come in when appropriate. Please put your questions in the Q&A section at the bottom, or if the Q&A box is not accessible to you, you can click on raise hand. If you're on the telephone, click *9 to raise your hand, and I will unmute you and let you voice your question. And questions will be answered as they come in, and we'll try to get through all of them. So thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm going to clear this and let our presenters take over. I have a little bit to say about them. So Angie Brunk is a social sciences academic services librarian at K-State. She holds a Master's of Applied Science in Human Factors. She was born with a visual impairment and has been active in research and advocacy for library accessibility for many years. She's greatly expanded her research on games and accessibility since 2021. Daniel Ireton is an academic services librarian at Kansas State. He has a focus on arts and humanities, including theater, art, philosophy, and he's been researching using games in education since 2008 and began incorporating accessibility into his work in 2021. And I know these presenters come highly recommended from others on the board who have seen them in the past. So I am going to let them share their screen, turn myself off, and let's have a great webinar. Thanks, everyone. You're muted, Daniel. You guys are muted. We can't hear you.
There we go. Are we coming through? Oh, can you hear us now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for your kind introduction. We're also having a bit of technical difficulties here, so we're going to work this out as we go. No worries. So I think to start with, then I am going to share my screen, and we'll start with our PowerPoint. Now, one thing that we have done in a couple of past webinars is we have worked to play some games and kind of show you some game design as it happens. And when I say game design as it happens, frequently when you're designing a game, things are going to break. even if you're modifying a game, whether it's for a different audience, a different purpose, just adding some house rules, or to make a game more accessible. That is engaging in game design. And game design, well, it's, how do I want to put it? Game design, you have to be willing to iterate. Things are going to fall apart and then have to come together a lot. So with that in mind, let's see. Let's see how we want to do this. Can I reach out to people through the chat, or will that only go to I'm trying to think how easily we can do audience participation on this, on a game here.
I don't think we can on a webinar.
Okay.
All right. So we'll just talk a little bit about One Night Werewolf, which is a game we like to try to play in Zoom events that aren't set up as a webinar. And the funny thing is, often games become less accessible when you take them into Zoom, but the ability to chat actually makes werewolves more accessible. The basic premise is you have a village that is plagued by werewolves. And every night, the werewolves get together and decide which villager they're going to messily devour. And in the morning, the villagers find whatever is left of one of their comrades. The game ends when either the werewolves have all been expelled or the werewolves have devoured all the villagers. And the object is for the villagers to decide who they think is a werewolf and expel them. So it can be quite interesting. And we'll get into this later, how this game plays well with or doesn't play well with different disabilities. But one of the interesting things is, for me as a visually impaired person, actually doing this in real life is challenging because the werewolves have to be able to communicate silently, which isn't really my strong suit. However, on Zoom, we can set up individual chats that allow the werewolves to communicate through back channels, as it were. So the accessibility of the game actually depends quite a bit on the format in which it's played in. So with that, having said that, I'm sorry we can't do that. It's often very illustrative. We'll just move on with our presentation then. And
I'll see if I can't come up with some ideas in the meantime.
right.
But yes, while we had that fantastic introduction, I'm Dan. I am a longtime game geek, and that's kind of what led to researching in games and education, because when I started conducting research and had research responsibilities as a librarian, I thought to myself, now, how can I make it in such a way that I can play at work? And it's working so far. I've been floating along this way for a while.
Well, and I, of course, been involved in learning research on how to make sure that we're making learning accessible, especially with the advent of active learning, which involves a lot of games and game-like activities. And then when I took up a job at K-State, we realized that our interests really dovetailed quite nicely. And so we have worked together to do more research on games and accessibility.
So yeah, you've kind of heard about our background. We started working together on some web accessibility. We were looking at web accessibility standards, which was not something I was as familiar with. And then, if you can't tell that Angie and I have worked together a lot of this came about because when Angie came in, we wound up as office mates. And as we were working together, as Angie kind of said, we sort of said, okay, the thing you're working on works with the thing I'm working on. So yeah, with Angie's background in accessible design and my gaming background, once we started to see some crossover, we really kind of ran with it from there.
So we're hoping you'll get a few things from this. First, and a few things that we plan to get when we started doing gaming events. So we wanted to show off our innovation lab because we do a lot of game mods through the innovation lab at the library. We wanted to create a great gaming event. We wanted to get people to think about accessibility in a way that is more approachable. A lot of times, if you start talking about accessibility, people either get scared or their eyes glaze over or both. But by doing a gaming event, and we'll get into why this works, but by doing a gaming event, that allows us to teach about accessibility in a way that is much more approachable. And we're trying to create connections. The library, the larger campus community, and the gaming community.
So I want to talk a little bit about types of games, and this is something that can be, it can get a little bit intimidating for folks who are new to gaming, who haven't been really gamers per se before. Um, and it's a lot of it, it's really, it comes down to playing and trying some things out. But if you know how to describe some games, that's going to be helpful to your audience, because they're going to see, they're going to have an idea of what you've got. Social deduction. So our example of werewolf, that's a social deduction game. You have a hidden traitor, and then working together, you're trying to find out who did this. Who is responsible. Trick taking, for those of you who grew up playing hearts or spades, Uno's not quite a trick-taking game, but it has some similar feel to it. It's just your basic card game. Narrative. So Dungeons and Dragons is probably the most famous as a narrative, or could be called a role-playing game. Some games have a smaller narrative, and it is really a collective storytelling. There are a lot of games that are cooperative in that sense, and the players are actually working together. Narrative games tend to have a lot more of those. Also, these are good. These are games that already have some design in place for making them more accessible. Polyominoes, that's analog Tetris. You're arranging shapes on a board. If you can work by feel, that's great. There's also a lot that don't work as well because you're dealing with a lot of visual information. Worker placement, this is getting into some of our newer, what I'll call prestige or designer board games. You might be familiar with Settlers of Catan. That's a little bit of a worker placement game. That's kind of one of the oldest ones. Um, a lot of roll and move, that's your Monopoly. That's your rolling dice. You move to a spot, something happens. I say roll and move. Candyland also applies. You're drawing cards, but it's randomly decided kind of what you're going to do. And then your party games, casual games, that's some fun stuff like, Cards Against Humanity, Apples to Apples. And we can talk about why some of these work better than others. But if you have an understanding of these games, and the more you play, the more you're just going to become familiar with it. As librarians, we sort of talk about it more as games as being another medium for information. It's funny, as a gamer, you could see some of the arguments happening about, are games art? Is this actually conveying quality information? Is it just fun? And I think part of it is people sometimes have a real issue with making things fun when they think it ought to be work. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. I also want to talk a little bit about types of gamers. So there are 4 of what they call Bartle types, usually. I've seen some where they've expanded it further, but this has always worked pretty well for my purposes. If you think about what happens in a game and what kinds of folks show up in it. Your explorer is interacting with the game world. They're wanting to know how the game works, not necessarily trying to win it, but they are wanting to understand the game. A socializer, and this is honestly more than half of all gamers, all players, you're getting together to talk and have a good time, and the game is just kind of a social glue. This is what you're going to see in a lot of folks that will come to a lot of your events. They are wanting to take a look at games, but games for them are more of an excuse to hang out with something happening in the background. In the lower right, you see the achievers. There's the ones that are trying to win the game. They are acting, but they are acting on the world. And then you have the killers. The killers, fortunately, usually less than 1% of the gaming population. They're not trying to beat the game, they're trying to beat the other players. And that's distinct because they're not necessarily trying to win the game. Their game might be, I want to make Jeff angry. And so I'm going to do things specifically to mess with him, even if it throws off my game, because the game I'm actually playing is I make Jeff mad. So that is something that you'll see. You will see that with, sometimes we'll hear them called trolls. That's also something too.
Well, and having just recently played the mean version of Uno with my niece,
Oh,
some games really do bring out the killer, and in fact are designed and encourage killer behavior.
yeah, there are games that function a lot on spite as a strategy. Let's see. There we go. So barriers for accessibility.
Yeah, so obviously there are a lot of barriers. The biggest barrier, especially if you're thinking about creating a gaming event, is that there really isn't a game that is universally accessible. RS Games, which has both an audio and a text-based interface, which will allow players of different abilities to have the same experience at the same time, comes close. However, honestly, it's ugly. It is literally just black and white text or audio telling you what's going on. There's no aesthetic experience. There's no real world building. So while it does have its uses, it's honestly not something I call real fun. So then other barriers, for the most part, games have things like their pieces can be too small to grasp. It can be hard to see. Game types or rules do not play well with neurotypes. For example, Flux, which I really enjoy, is a very unpredictable card game because actually you don't know what the rules are until people start drawing and playing cards. And in fact, you don't even know what the goal is until people start drawing and playing cards.
If this will, I think this is coming in backwards. So yeah, here's a goal of regeneration. This is from the Doctor Who Flux. Kind of a neat thing about Flux is that there's 50 some odd themes that you could get a set of it on, but they all are functionally very similar. And there are cards, again, you can't see it well, but the rules change and the way to win changes as the game progresses.
Yeah. And I actually really enjoyed that. And it was interesting to me. We did this basically this same presentation at a live event where we then had people play test games with us. And one of our participants said, when you described Flux, it sounded terrible. But now that I've played it, I actually kind of like it. And so that is one of the challenges when you're trying to put together a gaming event, is how to describe things well so that people know what they're getting into, but that also encourages people to still be open-minded and maybe try something they wouldn't necessarily think they would like, but actually, this is pretty cool. So, but yes, that's a common accessibility barrier. Some games aren't going to work well with ASL, or a lot of social deduction games require silent communication, through eye contact and gesturing, which for me is like, unless I'm really close to someone, and then that also means how can I conceal that information? For some disabled people, depending on your disability and on the game, concealing information can be hard. I was born visually impaired, so I don't understand what normal people see. So I could very well be showing my hand when I think it's concealed. So that can certainly be a challenge. Sometimes we have information that's conveyed only by color. And sometimes disabled people have conflicting needs and conflicting adaptations for games. So that's something to keep in mind. Also, the gaming community itself, As we well know, video games are notorious for gatekeeping, which is to say, trying to shoo out people they don't like. That's true of all games, and that does tend to fall harder on disabled people.
So some of our playtesting methodology. When I talk about playtesting, we kind of talked about it in terms of design. You can't really host a gaming event unless you are playing games. And when you're pulling something out and you want to test it with a group, if you can, have a group of mixed ability, if you possibly can, and not just in terms of vision or motor control, but also experience as a gamer. The more games you've played, I've been told sometimes I have a doctorate in games and I'm trying to explain to undergrads and I'm not getting on the right level. It's great to have a game that you can see beginners and experienced gamers enjoy together. If that's something that you can test, if it's in with your group, look at any obvious accessibility barriers, and you don't necessarily have to play through the whole game, but play through a few turns and then discuss. Come back together. What are some things that you notice? What are maybe some solutions? And we'll get into what are some solutions to improve a game here in a little bit. So why should you play test? Well, you can't explain a game unless you know how to play it. And a lot of folks they don't learn a game from reading the instructions. So really, if you're going to teach folks to play and putting out games for people to browse and look through, that's great, but you'll get a lot of people that walk through and browse and don't sit down and play unless there is someone that can sit down and teach them. So having a few ringers in your event is always good. That's something that we worked on. It's a great way. I mean, your play testers are going to learn to think a lot about accessibility. It's going to bring up issues that they never conceived of before when it comes to how they play, and just in terms of product design in general, how often people are excluded. You're building community. We are pulling connections throughout campus and bringing people together in what's a pretty low stakes way. And it's low stakes in part because of what we call the psychosocial moratorium principle. So it's a fancy term for saying it's a game, it doesn't matter. If you're trying to do something that normally you'd be a little shy about or you'd feel a little funny about, think of charades, for instance. If you weren't in a group playing charades, you would likely not mime things in public. But because you're playing a game, that's no longer a problem. You put it out of your mind. And getting play testers in, that's going to facilitate learning games from multiple perspectives.
We've actually brought in some engineering faculty, and doing this playtesting has made them think more about accessibility, and that's something they have told us. And so we found that this is a great way to reach people and to get them to actually start thinking about accessibility. So some of the modifications we have found, so we've been 3D printing things. This is one of my favorites. This is called Hipster Dice. It's actually a very, very simple game. Here is the original. Here's what we have made.
Can you describe what you're holding up for those who might not be able to see it?
Absolutely. Yes. And I will always try to do that, but remind me if I don't. So with Hipster Dice, we have the first die is, first of all, it's red with greenish icons. That's a problem right there. And it's relatively small, and which is great for making this game very portable. And it has different icons that represent different categories. Basically, you roll the dice and you have to tell your friends a new fun fact about that category, and then they have the opportunity to challenge you. And the larger one, we 3D printed this, and then one of our community who loves to paint miniatures painted this for us. We actually made two. This is one where everything is kind of in bas relief. It's a much larger die. It's a solid handful for me. I have fairly small hands, but still, it's a solid handful for me. And it has the same icons, but they're different colors, and they're carved into the die so that you can somewhat feel them. We actually had one where everything stood out. We ended up giving that to a blind scholar who was visiting K-State and was interested in our work for him to take back to Egypt. So we need to make another copy of that. But if you create them so that the design sticks out from the die, it's actually very, very easy to feel. And so someone who is blind could pretty easily play this. We've also made tactile tokens. Let's see, is that the Avalon tokens? Oh, okay.
Have Avalon, but those are that's
Yeah.
Jess's creations for Broom Service.
Okay, so for Broom Service, the original tokens just look exactly the same. These are just tiny little witches, and the information is conveyed only by color. And you also couldn't feel any differences. Whereas with the 3D printed tokens that we've created, if you can see, and you might not be able to, but the red and the green are actually quite different. The red is more like, I don't know, an arrow point almost. And the red to me looks like a fancy dreidel.
You know, it's we've all other colors. There's also like a kind of a bell shape for the yellow, a stack of pyramids for the black. So yeah, whereas before they were just color differences, they now have shapes and they're bigger and they're fun.
And you can feel them, and they add to the gameplay. So that's just it. A lot of these modifications make the gameplay better. Also, adding a neutral narrator. So for games like Choose Your Own Adventure or Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective,
Couple of examples here.
yeah, who remembers the Choose Your Own Adventure books from like the 70s, 80s, and 90s? They've actually made a game. Now, if you're just trying to play it on your own, somebody has to read everything and try to remember things. Whereas if you have a neutral narrator, kind of like a dungeon master in Dungeons and Dragons, their whole purpose is to just explain things and read cards, which allows people to participate and not have to worry as much. And it opens up participation to many more people. So sometimes it's as simple as providing adaptive equipment such as magnification or one of those card holders. That can actually make a huge difference, but you'll see different examples as we go along. One of the challenges is to figure out whether you should make a modification or buy it. So you've got to think about the resources you have. We are fortunate in that we have access to a makerspace. However, almost everybody has at least some access to a makerspace now because most public libraries at the very least have 3D printers. So think about the resources you have and make sure that you're using all those resources in your community. Your public library might be a fantastic resource for you. And we are trying to release, we're working on some things on our end with intellectual property and all that, but we're trying to release some of our mods into the public domain so that others can use them. In the meantime, if you email us, we might be able to send you stuff on the down low. But think about all the resources you have. Sometimes it's easier to make something. Sometimes it's easier to buy it. Like, oh yeah, Tactile Connect 4. Let's see.
Yeah.
All you have to do is drill holes in one set of tokens. That's all. And I have played this again with the visiting scholar from Egypt who was born totally blind. And he said, yes, this was actually very effective. I was concerned that you would need some visual memory to actually use it. But no, even someone who's born totally blind can in fact play Tactile Connect 4. All you got to do is drill holes. We bought this one and it doubled the price of the game just to drill holes.
We also, our visiting scholar also played Braille Uno with us. And so we were able to get confirmation from a Braille user that it does work, and it works exactly as it should. I think we have a picture later on where we get into, we also have a Braille Monopoly set. Now, Angie mentioned the cost of the Braille Uno, or rather the Tactile Connect 4 is double. It was 5 times the cost. You can get, for Monopoly, you can get it for $20, and you can probably find it cheaper. It was $100 for the Monopoly set, but you can see, again, if you can't see it here, this is just a 6-sided die like you would see in Monopoly. It came with a pair of them, but the pips are raised. They are, I mean, they are effectively Braille pips for the dice. So again, someone that can't see, it also does come with a large print and Braille property cards, money, chance, community chest, and a board that's designed in such a way where the properties, landing spaces also have Braille and kind of a raised tray area so that one can move their spaces, move the proper number of spaces, not necessarily just by visual information alone. So, a little bit about this.
Okay. Oh, I can't get rid
I
of
got
that. Okay. I'm trying to work with a laptop that's not set up for my vision.
So yeah, here you can see here's the board from our Braille and large print Monopoly. You can see it's this was all an aftermarket modification. That's part of the reason for the expense. And anyone that's familiar with any kind of product design, you'll know this, because Parker Brothers, Hasbro, they're not making these things on a large scale. So that's why, yeah, all of this was made by a company called Maxi Aids, and this was all modifications from an existing copy. So yeah, that's part of the reason for the markup. But you can see there's the plastic dividers, and the raised Braille for the names of the properties and such.
We have a question. Can you, back to the Monopoly, is that something that you buy the whole board, or do you just buy the plastic overlay that goes over the top when you were talking about it being $100?
Sure. In this case, it was the whole board. The overlay was already attached to it. It was already built in that fashion. So that was the only way to buy it. And then it also did come with large Braille property cards and the Braille dice. So no, not the overlay. It did come with the complete game for that price.
Yeah, and the money, it also came with Braille money. The tokens and the hotels and the houses are still all the same. So it's not perfect even at $100, but it's better than, it does allow everybody the pleasure of flipping the table and saying, okay, you won, Grandma, and all the family fights inherent in a game of Monopoly. So,
Oh, and there's our a larger image of our Tactile Connect 4. And you can see, yeah, the yellow pieces have all had the hole drilled in it. Now, if you, as Angie was saying, this was $20, and, which is way more than you need to pay for Connect 4. If you have a drill at home, you could make this. But again, if you're someone that needs Tactile Connect 4 because of a visual impairment or motor skill difficulties, yeah, your ability to operate a drill safely, that goes right out the window again. This is another one of our designs. Angie, do you want to talk about Avalon?
Yeah. So I love this because this just makes the whole game experience, this is Arthurian, so it's a little mystical. The normal tokens are these cards that just show you the character, and each of the characters are a little different. This is also a game where you have traders, and it's a social deduction game. But instead, we made 3D tactile tokens so you can feel what should be on the card, and then we have little bags to keep them in. So nobody else can see whatever token you're given, which again, for me with cards, I don't know what other people see. It'd be real easy for someone to sneak a peek. Um, but with the tactile tokens, you can't. And I just think the whole tactileness in these black bags adds a layer of mystery to a game that is, in fact, supposed to be kind of mystical and ethereal and fairy tale like. So it enhances the game, the world building, and the role playing. And then we've got Azul Crystal Mosaic.
All right, so Azul, this was a game that came out just a few years ago. There have been a few versions of it. It has kind of a neat historical bent to it. It's talking about the building of the palace of Manuel I, King of Portugal, how he visited palaces in Spain and saw the azulejos mosaics that were put together during the Moor occupation of Spain. And anyway, so it has this kind of historical pattern building, and I love whenever you can work in some art and history into a game. This one, the Crystal Mosaic, was actually an expansion that was sold originally, and again, depending on how well you can see the screen here, we can maybe show a picture of it as well. We've got move the camera around towards the end of the presentation. But this is an aftermarket expansion that someone could buy, and I think far cheaper than the game itself, that you could then have these overlays that were clear. So you set that on a board, and it does a better job of keeping your pieces in place. So here's an instance where this was something that also really makes the game more accessible. The manual dexterity required and just the odds of something getting bumped and knocked out of place drops entirely if you add the Crystal Mosaic expansion to it. And so here's where this was something that was intended just to improve the game for a general audience, but wound up making the game far more accessible. And of course, because it was designed for a general audience as a modification, it's way cheaper than where something like Connect 4 or Monopoly that was modified aftermarket.
Yeah. Well, and this is a great opportunity to talk about how games are not universally accessible. There are real pros and cons to this game. Obviously, you need some amount of vision in order to distinguish the colors and patterns. However, the patterns mitigate color blindness somewhat, as because you can still see the patterns. And the patterns are large enough that they would still be distinguishable to a certain degree for quite a number of visual impairments. But obviously, someone who's totally blind would have a hard time seeing them. So it's one of those things where we need to have a variety of games, because I can't think of a single game aside from RS Games that approaches universal accessibility. But when you're putting together an event, the more different types of games that you have, the chances that drastically increases the chances that somebody's going to be able to find a game that works for them.
So, oh yeah, why don't you talk about the descriptions?
Oh yeah. So communication is really important for starting a good gaming event. Good descriptions of the games and or modifications really allow people to make an informed decision about whether or not a game is going to work for them. So you're less likely, of course, there's no way to eliminate it entirely because games are weird. But it's far less likely that somebody is going to sit down and feel like a game's totally unsuitable for them and feel excluded and alienated. And that's really what we're trying to avoid. We want people to feel welcome at a gaming event. We want people to find something that, no matter what their disability is going to work for them. And so that's why we concentrated on trying to find a variety of games, a variety of different modifications to find something that would be both appealing and accessible to different audiences depending on their needs. And so communicating about what to expect in a game, it goes a long ways towards creating that welcome. So some people are not crazy about ambiguous or changing rules, though maybe Flux isn't the right game for them. Creating a common world can be a challenge for new groups. Some people thrive on that, others don't. And that's just players in general, let alone if we're talking about maybe somebody who is autistic. Maybe creating the shared world experience is very challenging, and that's not something they'd be interested in. Social deduction games, the same thing. Might not work for someone who's autistic, but on the other hand, I know people sometimes like to challenge themselves and do something that goes against their disability. I like to play a lot of casual games on my computer that are, especially on my giant iPad, that are more visual, to try to challenge myself to think visually. So, different people are going to have different feelings and preferences on what they want to do with games. But if you're providing good information, they at least can enter a game with an informed point of view. So also encourage people to bring and or teach their own games. You know, there's nothing wrong with a blind person wanting to teach sighted people beatball or something similar. So here are a couple of our sample game descriptions, and I'll go ahead and read them in the interest of accessibility. So Flux. If you don't like unpredictable things, skip this game. If you like a quick and wild ride, pick up this quick card game with a variety of themes to appeal to everyone's taste. Avalon. Who among those sitting at the table is the traitor? If you enjoy gossip, speculation, and smack talking, enjoy a round of the social deduction game. We've created tactile tokens so that more people can enjoy backstabbing and intrigue. So hopefully, if we talk a lot about the backstabbing and intrigue, people who are turned off by that, well, hopefully they will know this game isn't for me. Or again, with the psychosocial moratorium, I'm not normally a backstabber in real life, but there are certain games where I really enjoy bringing out my inner killer.
Our game day setup, of course, we had at Hale Library, the largest library at the K-State campus. We were trying to pull in as many folks as possible. I would think on an average day, our gate count is a couple thousand, I think, on a typical day. We did place ringers at several tables. So these were some of our play testers, some folks that we knew in local gaming communities. There are a couple of gaming clubs, and reach out to these groups, even if they, there may not be a strong tie. They might be kind of their own, consider themselves their own separate entity, but reach out to, like we reached out to the board game club, just a student group here at campus. They didn't really have anything to do with creating this. They did send us some play testers, or rather, I grabbed some play testers from them, and they sent some folks to come and play and bring some of their own games, and were willing to teach. This tap into your local gaming community. This is also a community that wants to see more gamers. I mean, there is a certain level of gatekeeping in game communities, but often the idea that we could make our stuff more popular, that appeals to a lot of gamers, and love being part of community events like that. So we arrange our tables from the lowest commitment, and in commitment, we refer to kind of a difficulty level and time, how long it would take you to play. And then we took those game descriptions and placed those on a number of different signs around the around our kind of, it's sort of a ring of concentric circles that we set up and move inward from lower to higher difficulty with those descriptions on. Oh, okay. And here's just a group of our students that were playing Avalon during our gaming event. This was going pretty much the entire time. This was like a 4 or 5 hour event. That was not the same group, but different groups came by to play it, and it was rarely unoccupied. The other big one that people stopped by for was Cards Against Humanity, which is always one. It's nice because of the way the print and the contrast works. They magnify so well. Oh yeah, I'm not going to read any of those out loud. If you played, you know why. So yeah, Cards Against Humanity was a big hit with a lot of groups. We're on a college campus, so we can get away with that sort of thing. Public libraries, other places may your mileage may vary on that.
Just Daniel, I'm gonna interrupt for a second. Someone has their hand raised. Chelsea,
sure.
I'm going to unmute you. You just have to unmute yourself, and then you
I'm
should
sorry, I just bumped the button. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's no problem at all. I'm going to throw out there, I did put in the chat, the in-person Kansas Disability Caucus is happening this August, and I just wondered about people's, if they would like us to possibly invite Daniel or Trina or set up a room during the caucus during those 3 days where people can look at accessible games or come in and play, kind of like what you were talking about just now. Just wondering about people's ideas, if that sounds like a good idea. Just put in chat.
We can bring our stuff. Just let us know.
Yeah, we're happy to travel.
Yeah, we'd love to just set up something where, people could come in and out, browse around, sit down and play, and no pressure. It's very much like the events that we'd run there. So would absolutely love to do it.
Yeah, and
Great.
then the more disabled people who play test with us and give us their feedback, the better our modifications become, and the more we're able to think critically about games. And obviously in different people, even with the same disability, might have very different takes. So yeah, that would be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, that'd be really cool if we could do that.
We have not talked about it as a board. The idea just popped into my head as you were talking about the events that you've had. So we'll discuss.
Okay. Well, yeah, discuss it. Let us know. Well, so some things that worked. Our numbers were really good. We had 114, and that was just registered attendees. These were people that came by the table. We clicked and added them. This is not counting folks that passed by and might have come in through a different entrance and we missed. Part of that is, you see DAS 100, that's Department of Arts and Sciences at K-State. And that class is
it's freshman seminar.
It's freshman seminar. It's welcome to college. So I was teaching a section of that intro class, like 17 some students. But I was able to get some of my colleagues that teach these sections. We were able to use this as one of the engagement events. And so we, we're asking students to go to so many events and write up a response to it, and got some great responses from my students for this event. It was a window for these new students into how the simplest things are limiting for people with disabilities. And in some cases in their papers, just absolute outrage that more is not being done. It was very edifying as someone that created it and as an instructor for this class to see really just a lot of strong reaction and a lot of the beginnings of understanding and wisdom. I mean, they're 18, 19, but they were getting there, and it was great to see.
Well, and even so the K-State newspaper actually covered our event. We got 2 very nice stories out of this. And of course, they interviewed students, and several students that they interviewed really got what we were saying. And were like, oh, wow, I didn't know this was a thing. I didn't know this was something that we needed to work on. And then when they heard about, oh, the large print accessible Monopoly is 5 times the cost. So it wasn't just Dan's students. It was a lot of the students that came were starting to see some of those barriers and realize that this is an issue that we need to work on society-wide. And I hope that really sticks with people. I think it did. Our setup was also great.
Yeah, we set up in a high traffic area. It was just kind of on the main floor, not tucked away in a room. So again, if you can put it in high traffic, it's not just people that knew about it. You're going to get people passing by that, there is a certain, ooh, games. What is happening? How is this here? Because it's not expected in a lot of places.
We have
And
another question. Do you go to any gaming bars for people with disability or for board games for events?
Oh, see, we don't have a lot of great gaming bars in Manhattan.
Right.
I have been to some, and I've been to some really cool ones. Um, I would love to. I would love to get something going like that. I think the closest we come is there's a few places that do like a once a month trivia. Um, and there are a number of game stores, though, not bars per se, but a couple of specialty game stores. And um, we have not tried to work with them. That's a really good idea. And I hope you don't mind that we might steal that, because I think that would be something. And if there is a local business, yeah, I bet that is something you could actually get some partnership on. One of our local businesses kind of helped us promote a little bit. This was, I think, not for our event, but for a previous one I did. So there's some potential for partnerships that I've seen. Yeah, we got to follow up on that. And yeah, if you've got game bars, that sounds cool. I want to go to them.
Yeah.
Thank you for the idea, Tavrik. And Tavrik, I don't know if you can see in the chat the emails. I put the emails of the two presenters. So if you have additional ideas, you can reach out to them.
Yeah, and we can also, we have it on our slides as well, our contact info, and yeah, please reach out anytime. Hopefully we can send a copy of the slides as well if you like.
That would be great. Thank you. And then I can send it out to everyone.
Sure. What we might say. Okay.
Yeah, because every event is a learning opportunity. So you've got to nag your volunteers. We didn't do that. And then people don't show up. So you got to nag your volunteers. The first time we did this, we had Dan and I at the welcome desk, which the second time we recruited students for that. Because we needed to be out on the floor playing games, encouraging people, maybe even heckling them a little. So think about where you're placing people. And we tried to set things up like fairly regimented the first time we did it. And we realized we needed to be more flexible, because what we thought people would be interested in might not actually be what they're interested in. So, more flexibility with our volunteer placement. Oh, and we'd really love to change the audacity of some people. We had, again, this was in the library, right out on the floor. We had the games on tables. We had signs. We had signs saying a gaming. Yeah, we had signs saying a gaming event was going on. And we had one group of students who decided they needed to sit at that table where we had King of Tokyo set up. So they rather sloppily boxed it up. And yeah, I don't know. We need to do something next time to take care of people who try to do that.
No, I don't think our second time round we didn't run into that same issue, but yeah, just be aware people will, and if you've worked with the public, you probably already know the public will not read signs or steamroll right over them.
I have another question. In terms of volunteers, can you give some examples of what those volunteers do and how many you typically would need when you have a group of people?
Sure, it's going to depend a little bit on size. What we had some snacks. We had like a snack table, someone there that was like, just offering things out. And of course, we things that are prepackaged, cans, not anything that,
Not anything.
Do you have volunteers actually providing any accommodations or sign language interpreters or?
See.
So we worked, because we're a university, I actually worked with our Office of Student Accessibility to, I asked Jason to reach out to his students to encourage them to go, but also they know who would need ASL interpreters. And so I asked him to let us know and or help us arrange ASL interpreters if needed. You know, obviously, if we were doing this in a different setting, we would try to have at least one ASL interpreter volunteer. We tried to, we had a volunteer who was going to be a dramatic reader for us. So that was one of the accommodations we mentioned in terms of, you know, having that neutral narrator. And then Dan and I and several others were floating around to kind of make sure people knew what modifications were available.
I think the
So
biggest thing,
Sure.
really is people that can play the games and teach the
Right.
games kind of on the spot. So having, if you've got a group that play tests and or just gets together and plays some things to pick out, that's who you want as volunteers, because more than anything else, you want people to teach the games. And if they're your play testers, they'll also know about what modifications you've made. Does
Yeah.
that kind of answer what you were looking for?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it does. If it doesn't, raise your hand.
Okay, yeah, jump back on if we didn't. So
And obviously it's going to depend on what resources are available to you and what your setup is. You know, we knew how we would get interpreters if we needed them. If you're offering this at, you know, and we had a relatively closed community, if you're offering this to the general public, obviously then it would be a good idea to have ASL interpreters there for the event, but it all depends on your community, your setup. You know, are you requiring people to register ahead of time? Things like that.
So this is just a collection of links, and we can go live on a couple of these that might be worthwhile. RS Games, this is the one that works with folks who are visually impaired or blind and allows people to play, you know, according to their abilities. Board Game Arena is just it has a number of board games in a digital format. The accessibility there is not always great, but with a free account, you could start testing out some games and play them without buying them. And there are some that are actually more accessible here than the physical games.
Right.
And then Board Game Geek is actually just it's a community of gamers, really multiple clustered communities of gamers together, descriptions, reviews, and in fact, there were focus groups on gamers with disabilities. There are chat groups, there are forums, and so that is a group that exists and discusses what games work for them, what modifications they may have tried. So that's already an existing community on there.
Well, and then another website we somehow forgot to put on there. Can I play that?
Oh, can I play? Okay, I was thinking of Meeple Like Us, and that wasn't.
There's two. Well, Meeple Like Us is largely defunct, unfortunately. It looks like because
Yeah, it hasn't updated for a few years now.
but they do have good information on the games they did cover. So Meeple Like Us, but also Can I Play That are two websites that are specifically for disabled gamers. I'm generally not going to recommend Meeple Like Us simply because it hasn't been updated. But Can I Play That?
Is the one, can you run it? Oh no, that's not the.
Yeah, it's just Can I Play That?
Can I play that? Okay.
Is much more up to date. The Library of Congress has
Here we go.
the Library of Congress has some websites. Now, see, our focus is on analog tabletop games. The Library of Congress has a tremendous live guide on video games. And again, we're happy to show that. We've got even more resources. We just couldn't include everything. So certainly ask us if you want more. But yeah, Can I Play That is a great resource. And of course, Board Game Geek and Board Game Arena. Some of the games in Board Game Geek do magnify well. So again, it depends on what your needs are.
Here's the we have in the chat there. Yeah, here's the NLS for the blind and print disabled. So
Right.
yeah, talking about our list of games.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me jump back to our PowerPoint. I think our last. Oh well, no, it took me back to the beginning. Of course it did. Actually, our last slide is just our contact information. So if you don't have that already, and I think well, and I'll email I'll email our slides so you can have access to those. Let's see.
If people don't have questions, we'll just spend some time. We always try to make sure there's plenty of time for questions and discussion. But if people don't have enough, we've got game modifications to show you.
Well, and actually, I'd like to show off. There's a, okay, bear with me. I'm going to have to move my camera.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm wanting to show off. Here's a few of the things, you know, unfortunately, with the room camera not functioning well, we couldn't do that. But here's a great example of something that's terrible. And again, you probably can't see it too well. The card.
Can you describe what you're showing?
Sure. I was just trying to hold up a board. This is a game called Eschaton. It's very interesting if you eschaton coming from eschatology. It's essentially about the end of the world, and players are different doomsday cults that are trying to win favor before the world ends. So lighthearted and fun, you can already see. But just taking a look at the cards, and I know they are reversed here, but look at the contrast, look how small that print is, how terribly fiddly that font is. Like, this is a card I have.
Just so you know, the image is not actually reversed, just so you know.
Oh, it's not? Oh, okay. I have excellent vision, and in low light, I would not be able to interpret those card faces very well. So yeah, I can't imagine with a visual impairment trying to read them. Yeah, and then here I'm holding up two small wooden cubes, which this is the only marker. They are very small, only distinguishable by color. We bring this, I like bringing this as an example that's of a game that's doing about everything wrong. Now, and I'm not trying to discredit it as a game. I really enjoy the game, but from an accessibility standpoint, it's among the worst I've ever seen.
Well, for Eschaton would not magnify well even because they're so low contrast.
Angie, we can't hear you. Oh, sorry.
So Eschaton would not even magnify well because the cards are super low contrast and the font is decorative, let's just say. Yeah. So, you know, one thing I do look at is how well would something magnify, because magnification is a perfectly reasonable modification and accommodation for a game that a lot of people can benefit from. And, you know, I don't know about everybody else, but I have an app on my phone that basically functions as a CCTV reader. And so that's a great accommodation, but like some games don't even magnify well. And so that's always something I'm looking at when I'm looking at games for modification. And that's why Eschaton, I was like,
yeah,
get it.
You would have to reprint an entire new set of cards, and yeah, that's
a copyright violation.
Right,
too.
yeah. There's, oh yeah, we got to worry about it.
Yeah. So, and that is an area that can get a little sticky, which is why we are also trying to be mindful of that with our modifications. Let's see, what else do we have more questions, first of all?
We don't right now, but feel free to questions, comments, anything, anyone?
Yeah. And
or games you've played?
Oh, what?
Or games you've played.
What's the app that you use? There's a question on
Maglite. I use Maglite.
Can you spell that for us?
Yeah, hold on.
Here, I can.
Yeah, mag.lit. LIGHT is the way it shows up on my phone.
And I think I just sent that.
Yeah, and I have an iPhone if it matters. But actually, no matter what phone you have, if you just Google or search magnification software, there is really good magnification software available for most phones. And it just uses your phone camera and can magnify things. I think it goes up to about 5x magnification. I just got a new phone which has more cameras, so it might go up higher with my new phone. um, but that's a great and one of the things we've been trying to do is to get our innovation lab to buy some of the small portable phone size CCTV readers because that's a great tool to have around and that a lot of people can use. So yeah, what's some of the other stuff we've got here?
Let's see. This was one.
Oh, zombie dice?
Zombie dice.
Okay.
So what I'm holding up here, it's just a number of, again, 6-sided dice of different colors. This is zombie dice. There are faces that will have feet, brains, and shotgun blasts. As a zombie, you're wanting to collect brains and avoid shotgun blasts. This is one that does have a counterpoint on RS games. So it's one that can be played
Right.
through that modality. Because there's only 3 facings and they are embossed, it is something that wouldn't be the worst. It's not great, but it's better than nothing in terms of being able to feel what the different shapes are.
Right. And the color is only relevant for the difficulty of the dice. It's not conveying important information.
Yeah. When a player draws dice, they're drawing out of a tube or a bag without looking. So again, there's not an advantage that a sighted player would have.
Right. It's just
over anyone else.
taunting you with how likely you are to get a shotgun blast versus tasty
Pretty
burn.
much.
So, but
I think that's a lot of what we have with us.
right. Oh, we've got Sheriff of Nottingham.
Why don't you talk about Sheriff?
Yeah, so Sheriff of Nottingham is one that we are still in the process of working on modifications for, but it's kind of a fun game. It's a bluffing game. I wouldn't call it I don't know, would you call it social deduction? But
No, it's bluffing.
It's bluffing.
It's kind of its own thing.
Yeah. So the idea is that you're trying to who is playing the sheriff rotates, and you're trying to get contraband past the sheriff. So
I've got a small bag.
Yeah.
And it's every player would have a bag. Then I hand it to the player who is the sheriff, and I'll say, "This has 3 apples in it." Now, that could be true. I could be lying. Maybe I bribe the sheriff. It is a game where you're earning money, but you also have to spend some money in terms of bribes. If you're lying and the sheriff catches you, that because they tried to do an inspection, you have to pay a fine. But if you're playing the sheriff and you harass just a normal citizen that's not trying to smuggle, you have to pay them money. Mm-hmm. So there's the risk, there's the bluff, there is pressing your luck on this one. And well, let's see. Right now, as I said, this is just as the game comes itself. I'm holding up a number of cards here. And the cards slip into this bag are imagined modification, which we haven't gotten to, as Angie was saying, haven't gotten to yet, would involve printing tokens. Tactile tokens for the different goods, and rather than bags, it would be little boxes. And again, this would work a lot like our modifications in Avalon, where there's it's creating a game situation that is going to be more accessible for more people and playing it in a way that is, engaging the individual where they are at.
Well, and what I would
I was
say is,
asking what's the name of the game that you're describing?
This is Sheriff of Nottingham.
yes, Sheriff of Nottingham. And what I will say is the cards are really not terrible. They're pretty decent for a lot of visual impairments. And of course, you could potentially braille the cards, although I think it would be more fun to create tactile tokens. Now, the problem with that is that could potentially make the game less portable. There is potential for problems with intellectual property. For example, this is a rooster. Where am I? There we go.
There you go.
And so the cards do have different color background to kind of give you an idea of what's there. And then, the rooster is a fairly large icon. And for example, because this one is red, this is an illegal good that you would definitely have to try to smuggle past the sheriff. But if you don't try to smuggle illegal goods, you're not going to win because you're not going to make a lot of money.
It's a bluffing game where you can't win without being at least a little dishonest.
Yeah, or good at bribery.
Yeah.
But the problem is obviously there's a total of how many cards in this? It's something like it's over 100 cards. So printing the tactile tokens is going to require some time from our innovation lab, and that is kind of the obstacle we're running into. So that can be one of the challenges with modifying games is sometimes you're sacrificing portability because everything won't fit in the box, or you're going to have to design a new box. The box becomes bigger. Sometimes the modifications can get kind of pricey. Now, if the makers of Sheriff of Nottingham chose to produce tactile tokens, they could do it far more simply than we can. So there also needs to be continued pressure on the gaming industry to make things that are more accessible. Because, with scale, this would be very cheap to manufacture. But for us trying to do it, it's taking a lot of time from our innovation lab because we'd have to print over 100 tokens. So that's a lot of time on the 3D printers. And then we'd have to print little boxes instead, which wouldn't be as bad as the sheer number of tokens. It's going to take a lot of time and filament. The time is the bigger obstacle, honestly.
So, I think with that's a lot of what we brought. Any further questions?
Yeah, let's give people a minute or two here to think.
Yeah.
And I put a question in the chat. I don't know if anyone was interested, but I just wondered if anyone had any games that they play or they like and they wonder how accessible they are, or if you've modified them yourself to make them accessible.
Yeah, we'd love to hear that. And we'd love to try to answer your questions if we know the game. Well, Dan probably knows the game. I might not.
Now, one thing, we had talked a little bit about game design, and just it can be as simple as adding house rules to a game. A lot of people play a lot of different versions of Uno, and they aren't following the rules as written. Same with Monopoly. Free parking doesn't mean anything. You don't get money for going to free parking. But that modification is sort of the easiest type of game design, is making a modification to an existing game, changing the rules slightly.
And Heather mentioned Candyland. I don't know if she's saying is that accessible or if she's made it accessible.
What?
Well, Candyland could be made accessible. Like, believe it or not, there is a tactile version of Twister, which we haven't got yet. We're a little nervous about doing that on a college campus. Okay, I really want to see it, but still.
Yeah.
Feel
But
free to unmute Heather if you want to add more to that.
So I would imagine Candyland could be made accessible in a similar way.
Yeah, off the top of my head, well, the Candyland set that I remember from last arcade, which my daughter's 15, so it's been a good decade at least. The cards are only showing a number of squares. You could replace the colors with symbols and change the board so that, again, there were patterns on the spaces in addition to the colors. That's an immediate fix that comes to mind. Also, instead of drawing cards, I think you could arrange it in such a way that you're rolling dice, which that might
Right.
be easier depending on the population, especially if you got the since they make Braille dice, that might be something else that would work well.
Well, they make dice that have tactile symbols on them for
Yeah.
various games. Like
That would also.
there's like a ramen Yahtzee that has symbols instead of pips.
Chelsea is chiming in. I was a student teaching, and I had a student that had a sight disability. I made a larger board out of fabric squares and
Right.
markers makers.
Yeah, that
Oh, that's brilliant. Was that
would certainly work too.
Was that Candyland or a different game? Or, I mean, anything like that is going to be, I mean, just creating something larger makes such a big difference.
You can unmute yourself. Go ahead, Chelsea, and speak.
Yeah, I was working with a student, and the student really liked to play checkers. The
Oh,
problem is
okay,
they had a small checkerboard, and I was trying to figure out how this kid can still enjoy checkers because the grandparents had to get moved into a nursing home, and I love to sew. And I had all these red and black fabric, and I'm thinking, okay, let's make a bigger fabric squares. And
It's almost like you made a chess quilt or a checkers quilt.
yes. And then, you know, the little pieces to put checkers on were too small now to fit the box. And so I thought, hey, I've got cat fabric and dog fabric. So I made little fabric small little circles out of animal heads.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So fabric decorated with cats and dogs, not for or okay. I heard cat fabric and dog fabric, and I thought like knitted from hair, and I'm okay.
I've also started having some wrist problems when I'm playing cards with my family. Right. And so I've got this little board type deal that holds all my rulers when I sew. And now that when I play cards, I line up the cards on my board so I can visually see things, and I'm not having to hold on to cards for a whole hour. And that helps a little bit with the pain in the hands and some of the dexterity.
Well, yeah, and you can buy several devices on Amazon that are specifically designed for that.
We have a couple more games that someone's mentioned. Chutes and Ladders, Hi-Ho Cheerio, card games like Spades, Rummy, Uno. You've talked a little bit about Uno, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, Uno, they do make a Braille version that you can get through MaxiAids. I know we also got Skipbo. So I think a lot of your other
well, and they sell Braille and various iterations of large print and high contrast cards for they have different types of playing cards for different visual impairments.
And how do you get those? Because you don't just see them on the shelves at, Walmart or something. You go online or
MaxiAids, and Amazon carries some, but MaxiAids carries the most. And those at least they're still, to me, god awful expensive for what they are, but they're at least affordable for most people. Like, to me, $100 for Monopoly is not affordable. Especially considering how little enjoyment you actually get from Monopoly. But the playing cards are actually at least affordable. And certainly a lot of games could probably be modified also by using random number generator apps like random.org instead of dice. And in fact, they do have both a coin toss and a dice roller at random.org, there are several apps and websites that will roll dice for you and allow you to choose the type of dice even.
I saw Hi Ho Cheerio.
I know.
We had another
Um,
question. People were asking if Dungeons and Dragons is the same as the zombie game that you were talking about.
The
Oh.
zombie dice, or there was
I can't call on someone because they entered their question as anonymous, but if you want to ask,
Okay.
just raise your hand, someone, and you can
Yeah.
give more detail.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, and I mean, in any kind of Dungeons and Dragons is it's one of the bigger games in the public consciousness, but it's not necessarily well understood. What you're doing in that game is there's going to be a number of players and one separate player called the Dungeon Master, who's kind of the narrator. Um, each player has their own character, and cooperatively, you're essentially telling a story. You're also there are dice involved because there are monsters. It's Dungeons and Dragons. So it is in some ways it's more involved but also more open-ended, and it is the kind of game where if you have an understanding of the rules and your own means of interface, someone who's visually impaired could play pretty easily. Now, as far as a player who's visually impaired playing as the dungeon master, I could see some definite difficulties there.
But they do have some braille tools, at least for Dungeons and Dragons.
Mhm.
Not as many as they should, but they have
No.
a few.
Zombie game. I'm trying to think. If that's...
Was they talking about zombie dice? Because that's the only zombie game we have.
I think that's what.
Yeah,
Okay.
and zombie dice doesn't really create a world. It's just kind of it's a simple dice chucker. And so it's not really a role-playing game.
Yeah. But I mean, if there's more specific questions about
Right.
Dungeons and Dragons, I've been playing for about 30 years, so I could answer questions about that. So
Great. We have about 5 more minutes left if anyone has any additional questions. And like I said, I will send out once the presenters send me their presentation, I'll send that out so that you all have the links in their emails.
all right, let me actually.
Or if you think of something later, you can always email Kansas Disability Caucus at Gmail. And we can hopefully help you out or put you in contact with someone who can.
All right. And I am emailing you our slides right now. So those will show up any minute.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you so much, Angie and Daniel, for sharing your expertise and for advancing accessible gaming in the world. It's a good thing. Like you said, we have to put pressure on manufacturers and companies to make things more accessible.
And yeah, this is a small way to do it.
And sometimes it only takes a very small modification that if manufacturers would just be a little bit creative, wouldn't even cost a lot of money. That's what really gets me, is a lot of this stuff does not have to be expensive.
Well, yeah, like the drilling the Connect 4, done in the factory, this costs nothing.
Literally
So
nothing.
And for a quarter of the price. So yeah. Well, if you have questions, you have our contact information. Just passed along our slides, so that should be coming out soon. And yeah, if you want us to bring the show live, please let us know. We'd be more than happy to come and visit. I can toss a bunch of games in the bag, and we'll meet you wherever you're at.
That would be great. We'll discuss it as a board. And it seems like everyone on the webinar, 100% of the people said they wanted to have something like that. So if you're wanted, we'll get it figured out.
All right.
Okay.
Sounds like good
Thank
news.
you everyone for attending. Don't forget, the last in this series of winter webinars is next Wednesday at the same time at 2:00.
And the presentation will be by Sherry Coatney from Skill. Many of you know her. Sherry is very good at lighting the advocacy fire in all of us. So I know she'll be doing that again. So watch your emails next week for that link. And if anyone that wants to join, you can still register. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Angie.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right.